Okay, today we look at a very interesting game. Certainly, one game that is going to be of importance to anyone who has a tendency to play a little bit passively. Anyway, the game starts with e4, e5. So far, so good. It's a well known king's pawn opening, and then knight f3. But here, black replies with the knight f6, which is the Petrov defense. Basically a counter attack on the e4 pawn instead of defending e5. So the game continued. Knight takes d6, which is an important intermediate move. Taking on e4 by black doesn't really work because of queen e2. So first kick the knight back, then take. And here the best move is d4, d5, strengthening the outpost. Bishop here, bishop e7, castle, and castle. So now we, as white, we undermine the center, which turns out to be also the defense of the e4 knight. This is all theory, all book. c6. And now we continue on with pressure on the center, pressure on e4. And there are many ways to deal with it, but here he plays knight f6, which is a good theoretical move. h3, h6, still book. Here the recommended move by in the database is pawn to a3, and instead I tried a different idea, which is bishop f4. And immediately he goes wrong by changing the bishops on dark squares. He should be keeping his bishop. Very important because later in the game you will see there's weaknesses on the dark squares. And certainly one thing that this does, assuming the pieces get traded, is it will give e5 to my knight. Anyway, the game continues. Take on d6. It's obvious because it's the trade weakens the dark squares. Rook e1. It's kind of interesting move. It's waiting, taking control of the file rather than resolving by pushing on c5 immediately. Bishop here, and only then do I push the c5 pawn. Queen back, b4, quite obvious. a6, trying to stop the b5 break. a4, not here, and here, an interesting decision to actually lock up the queen side. I mean, this lockup is based on the fact that this knight doesn't have any really good square to go to, and it can. That's what I was thinking when I was analyzing this position. I thought even if it goes back, he doesn't have any real good prospect. You would need to probably play a rook there and play the knight back there, but then here it can't go because of the bishop. I mean, clearly this knight would love to eventually get to g6 and f4, but it's not going to be possible because of moves like queen c2 in the meantime. So the game continued with rook d8, and I don't think that's a particularly good move, but it is based on a potential sacrifice here. And then when everything gets traded, this knight comes here and the rook is on d4, and for the pawn, black manages to have quite a strong position. So just queen here. This square is an issue, so I've got to keep an eye on it. And then he does this, which is a good move. Rook up to double up. Knight f8, that's the plan I was talking about. Double the rooks. And here, that's a mistake. He's only thought that I would trade, and it didn't consider this move sufficiently, because now what this move does, it stops the trade on the e-file, but it also prevents his knight from coming out, which was the whole purpose of the maneuver going to f8. So that starts his trouble. So this move is possibly aimed at exchanging on f5. So let's see what goes on. Not yet. So now we give him a distraction, because if he goes to f5, he gets hit with knight b6, and his position very quickly gets very ugly. So he goes back to e6. Now this position is notorious for him not being able to do much. I was waiting for him to go and sacrifice his bishop here, which leads to absolutely nothing after rook e3, and the rook swings to g3, and he's got no attack, nothing. So the next move is obviously knight b6. The queen goes on dark squares now. And now simply just f4. Build up on it. If he tries to make moves like knight h5, he would probably get hit with g4 straight away. And of course the knight shouldn't come here because of the rook swinging here. And he would have to sacrifice a pawn by playing knight e4. Bishop back, so that's the eternal problem with his position. He has to shuffle this bishop back and forth, trying to find some oxygen. g4, so further restricting him. And now he plays, what do you think is the freeing move? But he doesn't realize he doesn't have much here, so I just play king g2. And the way I dealt with this position is most interesting. Just let him solve the problems, let this clock run down, while I play moves that improve my position. So that's a weakness. I get in there immediately. And so now the bishop is on a very good square on g6. And perhaps here he should just drop back on f8. But he decides to make a mistake, which is taking here. And now he has absolutely nothing left. This position is lost. And it's going to be very obvious from the lack of moves that his queen has. King here, just push. He cannot oppose, he cannot get the bishop out, he cannot do anything. So he goes on playing the king back and forth. So I gain space on the king side, right up to playing king f4, which is going to be very useful later on. And now I infiltrate. Take, rook c7, and he still doesn't have any good move. Now it's worth noticing that this position is basically zugzwang, because what he would like to have is the option to pass in this position. If he could pass, then he would hold, because white has no way of making progress here. There are no pawn breaks, there are no infiltration of the king, there's no threatening with the rook, but unfortunately he has to make a move, which was either rook d8, or which he played, or king in the corner. So that gives me a chance to check and go here. Take, check first. That's an intermediate check. And now the king comes up. He goes back defending. The king goes here. He goes there trying to use the fact that my king is busy on g6 to attack the e6 pawn. But to his horror now, he realizes that if he takes the pawn on e6, he gets checkmated on b8. And so he just, he's basically like a sitting duck here. He's got nothing. And in this position, he resigned. So that's a true positional crush if I've ever seen one.